Welcome back, everyone. Just as promised from last episode, we are jumping in with another re-review, a one-year review, whatever you want to call it. We're going over the Edelkrone Wing Slider. I did a review of this thing 1 month after receiving it about a year ago. The visuals from that review may not be as good as this one, but the content was just as solid. Today, after using it for a year, I'm going to talk about how some of my opinions have changed and how I use it differently than I used to. Let's jump right in. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. As I just said, we're going to be talking about the Edelkrone Wing Slider and how my views and uses of this beast have actually changed. Now, if you remember in my first review, which is linked right up top if you need it, that I talked about how much I love it. And I do still love it for all of those reasons. It is still very tactile. I love the way it actually slides. It's different than a regular slider, the way it points off this center point. So you can actually slide it over things a little easier, in my opinion. But it is kind of narrow in what it can do by the base point of it. The way this thing works is it kind of works on friction, and that's a really good thing when it's mounted to a nice, steady, stable tripod. But it's a bad thing when it's mounted to a very light, little tripod, because the friction of you pressing it forward will move that tripod unless you're not holding it solid. So whenever I would put it on something small, like on a countertop, and start moving it, unless I was holding it as firm as I can, making sure that it's steady and kind of putting it up against my chest and doing the nice little slide like this, it would always jump forward, and I could see that in my footage. And that started to kind of drive me nuts. Once again, if you're using it on a big solid tripod, it's amazing. I love it because it moves faster than my other sliders. So if you're someone who operates a gimbal for the majority of your interior videos, this is a nice addition because it allows you to keep that 60 frames a second, 120 frames a second, 240, whatever you're shooting on your gimbal, and put it on this so you can kind of match a fast speed, like 120 frames a second, with the fast motion of this, slow it down in post, and that'll give you a really good, unique look, and it will match the majority of your other gimbal footage because you can put the friction point to make this move the same speed you move your own gimbal. You know what speed that is, you're used to it. So this is a good slider for someone who does a lot of gimbal work because you can use the gimbal over countertops and stuff like this, keep this mounted on a tripod, and just use it wherever you want that nice, slow, steady push in or slide over that are all the same speed throughout the house. One of the things I talked about last time is how much I like this little gear on the bottom that allows you to adjust how much tension is put on this slider. So if I open it up, there's almost no tension. If I crank it down, there's more tension. So it can control the speed in which you slide. I do still really like that because once you set it, you can leave it there. And once again, if you use it in every bedroom for one shot, all of those bedrooms' speed will be the same as long as you push them the same. It's much easier than pushing a regular slider because there's resistance on the push. So it allows you to actually push it in a steady way. My issue with other sliders is that there's no friction. There's nothing holding you back from the slide. So you have to time yourself perfectly every time, just like you do with a gimbal. You have to time yourself. If you want all the footage to match, you've got to be able to time your rock to be the same every single time. Well, this takes the guesswork out of that because the friction allows you to push it the same. It won't go faster. It can go slower, but it won't go faster. So as long as you're just always pushing it forward, it will always move that same speed no matter how hard you push it or how soft you push it. It's still going the same speed. That is one really useful feature of this. All right, now let's talk about why I actually use this slider less than I used to. When I first started doing this, I was used to the gimbal video shooting, so I was shooting at 60 frames a second. I liked the way this moved fast and I slowed everything down together. But if you've watched my other videos where I talk about how I've transitioned over to the Slider 1 Pro and kind of changed around my workflow so that the actual quality of my interior shots look better, That is the main reason I switched over. Now, I do still like it because of its speed. That's one thing that the Slider 1 Pro does not have. It has no speed at all. It's always slow. So with wide angle shots like we do with interior real estate photography, the Slider 1 Pro has to be sped up in post-production. This can be done at the exact same speed that it moves, so you don't have to speed it up or slow it down. You can make this go the exact speed that you want it. I wish this Slider 1 Pro went about twice the speed it does just for using the wide angle lenses. It is still really nice on a zoomed in, but once again, with the wide angle and this, you can move it as quickly as you wanted. So it's really nice. And another big selling fact over this to the Slider 1 Pro is the price. It's like half the price, which is really good, especially if you've already spent a lot of money on your gimbal and that's what you're mainly using for your videos. All right, the very last thing I want to talk about is the actual build construction on this thing. After having it for a year, you know I've dropped it at least once because I talk about how clumsy I am. I brush it up against things. It just sits on the floorboard in the back of my truck right now. It doesn't have like a case or anything, and it's not scuffed up. It's heavy. It's a beast. It is a piece of machinery that will last. If you're worried about spending the amount of money this slider costs and worried about getting something that's not going to last very long, like I said, 1 year of constant use, and it still basically looks brand new. I love how heavy it is, and if you absolutely hate it, since it is so heavy, just use it as a really cool doorstop for your studio or office. You'll always get a question about it. All right, everyone. That's basically it. That's the whole review on the Wing Slider, or should I say the re-review. I used to use it a whole lot. Now I just use it for very specific situations, but that's because I've personally changed up my workflow. I think if you are trying to do a slow slider style video like I personally produce, the Slider 1 Pro is your better option. It's a little more expensive, and by a little more I mean almost double, but it has that slow, smooth, steady action, and it's all motorized. If you like the tactile feel and you are a gimbal video creator, I personally believe this is a better slider for you. It will be able to match the speed of your gimbal since it moves faster than the Slider 1 Pro. It also has that tactile gear response, so just keep in mind when you use it to sturdy the tripod or whatever you have it sitting on top of so it doesn't move as you press forward on this. It's the only bad thing I've ever noticed about this compared to any other slider. Every other slider, since it has no tactile response, it has no friction or pushback, that it's very easy to slide, and you usually don't move the tripod around with it. This thing, you can crank it down to where it has a hard push, so it moves slow. But in order to successfully use that, you're going to have to sturdy the device it's attached to, whether that's a tripod or a countertop or some light stand or whatever it is. Just keep that in mind. Other than that, once again, if you're a gimbal video shooter, you're going to absolutely love this slider. If you're looking for a cheap option to get into real estate video, you'll also really like this slider. I used it for about 4 months straight all the time before I changed over to the other slider and started producing the slower style videos that I do now. Those just seem to be a better option for my agents, and that's the only reason I switched over. It's whatever the clients prefer. If they start preferring the gimbal motions and the fast motions of this thing, I'll switch back to it in a heartbeat. I am not stuck on style or convinced that my way is the best. I am convinced that whatever my clients want to pay for is what I am going to create because I am here to make money. I am passionate about my craft, and I enjoy doing it. I love the finished product, but once again, what good is a finished product if I can't feed my family with it? All right, that's all I got for you. That's it for the 1 year review of the Edelkrone Wing Slider. As I always say, if you like the information I presented and the way I presented it, then please press the like button, mash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you next time. Bam.